Okay, so this week the House gave first round approval to nearly $1.3 billion in an income tax cut on Tuesday, with the majority not allowing any debate on that portion of the bill. A floor amendment added to 798 would cut the top income tax rate from the current 4.7% to 3.7%. And the majority party silenced us before we could actually debate that piece. Yet the next day, the House spent well over an hour talking about landowner hunting permits. Another stark frustration for the super minority party in this state and in this chamber, because we are so focused on making sure we provide relief to middle-class Missourians, to low-income Missourians, and all we see from the majority party right now are ways to further increase wealth for the wealthiest Missourians. On top of that, majority Republicans continue to believe that they know better than Missourians. We've seen attacks on Amendment 3 this week. We've seen attacks on Proposition A this week. And the Senate is moving forward with HCS for HB 495, which goes against a vote in 2012 to retain control over the St. Louis Police Department. All of these things, once again, are incredibly frustrating for the super minority party, who has come here to not only defend the will of the voters, but to make life easier, cheaper, and make government a little bit less intrusive here in Missouri. We continue to do that. Democrats continue to push our own legislation to make sure that our constituents' voices are being heard. And with that, I'm proud to report that HB 954 from Representative Stephanie Boykin has been heard in committee this week. HB 391 from Marlene Terry, which would give preference to grandparents in third-party child custody cases, was heard in committee this week. Adrian Plank, HB 1026, has an agricultural education bill moving. And two bills sponsored by Kemp Strickler were voted out of committee last week after being rolled into companion Republican bills. And I'm going to give each of these members a chance to speak on their individual pieces of legislation, starting with Representative Boykin.
Good afternoon. I'm Representative Stephanie Boykin, representing the 70th District, which is located in St. Louis County. I'm a military veteran. I'm a retired lieutenant colonel, and I served 40 years. And I'm currently the ranking member on the Armed Forces and Veterans Committee. The piece of legislation, House Bill 954, seeks to memorialize within the Missouri State statutes the protections provided under the Servicemen's Civil Release Act, also known as SECRA, to members of the Missouri National Guard who are called to state emergency duty. SECRA is a crucial federal law that shields active duty military personnel and those serving on state emergency duty from financial and legal hardships, ensuring that while they're out serving, either responding to a national disaster or like during COVID, if they're administering shots to support medical personnel, or addressing a flood like what I went through and what I was involved with in 1993 when I was called on state emergency duty to handle that disaster. But what this legislation does is it mirrors the federal protections to ensure that language is included in the Missouri statutes. It is a bipartisan legislation. Me and my colleague from across the aisle, Representative Bill Irwin, came together, presented the bill, and it got complete support across with Republicans and Democrats. So if there's any questions, I can answer them at this time.
Does this cover, like, if Guard members are federalized, they go and help with border security?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And they would be more readily covered by the federal law. It's just that we just want to make sure that language is in the state statutes.
Lieutenant Colonel, thank you for your service, first of all, and first and foremost. What kind of hurdles do you see moving forward with the Republican majority with this bill?
I don't see any. I know if it's anything like it went in committee, which was unanimously both Republicans and Democrats would support. I don't see anything that's going to stop it. At least it wasn't obvious during committee.
Can I ask you something about a proposal at the federal level, or some reports at the federal level about VA workers. There's reports that there's talk to cut about 70,000 VA jobs. I'm curious how you think that might impact Missouri veterans.
Oh, it's going to be terrible for veterans across the country. Specifically as it relates to VA health care, there was even issues not only with reducing the workforce, but also reducing the funding that they have to work with. For example, there was like a credit card that was used to if they needed to buy parts for dialysis machines that were in veteran facilities. There was once the cut started, they had like only $0, and they were told to work it out. And so my understanding is, just from listening to the news, that that now they do have the funds where they can press forward to do that, and that there are some workers that did get notified on yesterday that they can come back. But it'd be devastating. I mean, majority of those veteran workers are healthcare providers, and so that would be devastating for our veterans.
In terms of the care that they receive, in terms of getting an appointment, that kind of stuff?
Yes, because those who make the appointments, those that, because currently there is something in place where if a veteran has to wait over 30 days for an upcoming appointment, there are provisions in place where they can be referred to an outside a medical facility to make sure that they don't have to wait as long. But if you don't have the people to process those, that can cause some unnecessary delays. All right. Thank you.
Adrian?
So I'm Adrian Plank, the 47th House District. I do have the 1026 move-in. We had a hearing yesterday. And the reason this bill came about is in my little area there, I've got an elementary school that I've seen that they were actually teaching elementary schools students how to grow their own food. And I think that kind of inspired me, because we've lost lots of farmers in Missouri due to the monopolization of our food industry, especially when it comes to foreign entities. And so I think the best way as the minority party to kind of counter that is to let kids do what they probably like to do, and that's play in the dirt. And so when you start at a younger age, I think we can actually curb food deserts, food insecurities. The more people that know how to grow food, the better. And so that diversification and that early learning will increase memberships in FFA and 4-H, and being one of our top industries, I think that's very important.
Is your bill mostly centered around rural communities or urban communities too?
Well, it works both ways. And so this pilot program that was produced by DESE ended in 2023, and it gave curriculum and an avenue for these elementary schools to actually develop this program on their own. And so with that, I think that's going to help rural and urban areas. I mean, it just makes sense, right? It's any elementary school.
And have you talked to Republican colleagues? I mean, farmers, other members of the rural community?
Yeah, absolutely. One of my good friends came and testified. They've got a little program there, the Giving Garden in Ashland, Missouri, and that's, they get a lot of volunteers too, but they've got regular classes, and they learn how to compost and grow tomatoes and all this stuff. And they get a little facility where they can clean their food and then eat it. And one day I was there, they were doing strawberry shakes, cutting up their own strawberries. So that's, when I was little, growing up on my grandpa's farm, we did a lot of that stuff, playing in the dirt and feeding the calves. And I think those are experiences that are lost because we have lost so many farmers. Those farmers don't have the kids coming into those industries anymore, which means they're not getting taught how to farm. So it starts at a young age, and the time when they're learning the most, let's make sure they can grow food.
Will it help to reduce egg prices?
Egg? Well, if we can get them all to have their own chickens, I suppose it could. Anything else? thank you for the time.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kemp Strickler, State Representative in House District 34 in Lee Summit, and I'm excited because in the last week and a half we've exec'd two bills of mine that I've had with Republican co-sponsors. House Bill 291, which is something that my Lee Summit district had asked for, but it allows, basically, well, it requires that Missouri universities accept scores from the International Baccalaureate degree program in high schools. And that's very much like AP classes, where you take a test at the end of the semester or end of the year, and then if you score well enough, then you get to those classes count for college credit. And we passed something a couple of years ago. Representative Brown helped get that through. And so we wanted to do the same thing for those school districts that use the International Baccalaureate program, like mine in Lee Summit, North Kansas City does. There's several across the state. So Representative Brown is going to, he has the committee substitute that rolls both of ours in, and I'm excited for that for my community. The other bill, House Bill 293, got rolled into one with Representative Bill Irwin and Representative Cecily Williams. Representative Williams will be the lead sponsor on the bill, but it's one that I've worked on for the past 2.5 years, and that is to make it illegal to track someone's vehicle without the owner's knowledge. That is a real problem in the state. We've had, on the Kansas City side, we've had people who have been killed because ex-boyfriends have tracked them. We, in fact, I was talking to someone from my district who works with a domestic violence shelter, and just in the last couple of weeks, they had one of their women who was being tracked by an ex, and fortunately they found it. Currently, we don't have specific bills on this that can be a part of stalking. This would allow us to intervene sooner, and I'm excited about that. I'm really excited that Representative Irwin, Representative Williams also wanted to be a part of that. So those are a couple bills that I'm excited about. If I can take a moment, I'd like to talk about a bill I'm not excited about, and that is what Representative Ani talked about with House Bill 798 that we perfected on Tuesday. We didn't get to, in that perfection process, and it was a complicated bill. It had a couple of amendments, big amendments, thrown on it at the last minute, and those amendments are important. There was the bill in total has a fiscal note of $1.3 billion, and we were cut off from talking about that. We were not told about a 1% income tax decrease from 4.7% to 3.7%. When inquiring on the amendment, we were told about three other things. That was not even mentioned, and that's the biggest part. That's about $1 billion of the $1.3 billion that could be impacted by this ultimately. We also, ironically, interestingly, never got to discuss the original bill itself. We were PQ'd before we got a chance to talk about the bill that was on this, which does a couple key things. One, it institutes a flat tax, and I think that change from where we're at to a flat tax should be debated before we vote on it. It was not even discussed. We also eliminated the Missouri Working Families Tax Credit, which helps about 180,000 Missouri families. And for those of you who were here last week, you heard Representative Stephanie Hein and myself talking about how that helps and how we wanted to expand that and make it refundable. This does the exact opposite. It takes away that tax credit for the 180,000 families that are currently getting that. And once again, we were not even able to discuss that because we got PQ'd. So those are things that I think Missouri citizens expect that we should discuss and give the full weight to. We did not get that. That's bad government. I'm happy to take any questions.
The tracking device bill,
Yep.
is that, are you talking about like license plates or what I put under Rudy's car?
So that would be that would be like how you can get an AirTag for about 20 or 25 bucks. If someone tapes that to the underside of your vehicle without the owner's knowledge, that under current law, there's nothing unless it's part of stalking. if that can contribute to stalking. But we believe that that should be a misdemeanor A. If it continues, if someone does that repeatedly, that's not an accident. You don't accidentally do that. Then it would become a felony E.
Is that the same for law enforcement that
We have
investigating?
We have exceptions in there. For law enforcement, we say, they have to be following the appropriate procedures, a warrant, that kind of thing. But there are several exceptions in the bill for things that we don't want to get in the way. You can allow your insurance company to track you so you can get discounts. We put an exception in there because, again, the owners are clear on that. You can track your kids, but again, you're the owner, you can do that. So the exceptions are in there, and the exceptions are important, but it's also really important that we protect, not just women, but heavily women who are in domestic abuse situations. And actually, if we think about it, a couple of years ago, we had a situation like that, not that extreme, here in the Capitol, where we had a former legislator who helped a private investigator put a tracker on some of, I believe it was Governor Parsons' staff cars without their knowledge. So it can happen to legislators as well.
Is that different from the one-party state that we're in? We have the one-party rule, of course, in terms of recording conversations. So if somebody did that to the governor's staff car, under current law, that would be allowed.
Well, that's in a sort of a different space. That's sort of the recording part, right? This is the physically tracking. One of the things I saw was unfortunately one of the young ladies who was murdered on the west side of the state. Her boyfriend had put one on, had tracked not just where she's at, but also had something so it alerted when she was at work, when she was at her home, when she was at these different places. And that is just, in my opinion, way too invasive.
Can I ask about your House Bill 291,
Yes.
the baccalaureate program?
Yes.
Talk about what the whole purpose, intention at least, what you're trying to do here. What's the goal?
Absolutely. The goals, there's really two goals. One is, it is a fabulous program. It is rigorous. The students coming out of there are the best of the best students in the high schools they're at. And I know this personally. My daughter took a couple classes in them. But the folks who take a bunch of them, they are the best of the best. We want to first encourage them to stay in Missouri and attend college in Missouri. These are the folks that we want to have them here for a lifetime because they are hardworking, brilliant, they manage their time incredibly well. The other is that by providing, if we get this bill through into law, it will encourage more students to take those kind of classes. Right now, if they take, a really hard set of classes, there's no guarantee that they're going to be able to, get credit for that when they go to university here in Missouri. So this would ensure that, they know there's a chance for a good payoff at the end if they take these hard classes.
Did you get any pushback from universities because it could help to reduce college debt, I assume?
Potentially, but actually the University of Missouri system spoke in favor of it. The associated universities, the other universities spoke in favor of it, as did community colleges. Everyone's on board. All right. Thank you very much.
So Monday, the utility bill with construction work in progress, future test year, is going to be heard and apparently voted on in the House Utilities Committee. We heard that there's a chance that you may be taking that bill to a third read vote for the governor next week. What's your strategy? What's your point of view on what does that bill do or don't do for consumers?
It's very complicated question. So SB4, the omnibus utility bill, is pretty complicated. There's a lot that's in it. It's a long bill, and there's stuff in there that I think that our caucus is favorable to. I think there's stuff in there that we are unfavorable to. I think one of the things that is important to keep in mind right now is we are talking about a bill that could potentially raise rates for consumers. That said, we are also in a period where rates are raising for consumers either way. And I think it's really important to hold our utility companies responsible for their part in this, making sure that they are growing and meeting the needs of our state. And part of this bill is them asking for legislative help in doing so. And so, we are in a space right now with the caucus where we are working really hard to make sure everyone really understands what's in the bill that came out of the Senate so that we can be fully prepared to debate it in committee and debate it on the floor next week, raise our concerns, and make sure that we sound the alarm to consumers across the state that this could potentially affect them.
So the Senate Democrats were split evenly on that bill, 5-5. Is there a similar split among Democrats in this chamber, or is there a consensus point of view on that bill?
It's definitely going to be split. It's, everyone in the Democratic caucus has full freedom to vote their conscience, vote their district, and every district across the state looks a little bit different, right? And so my caucus is encouraged to educate themselves, talk with stakeholders in their own communities, and determine what's best for their community.
Are you personally voting on it? Do you know?
I'm not sure right now.
Senate Democratic leader voted for it, so.
Yep. Curious what you guys think about the latest proposal to come out of the Senate on St. Louis Police Department takeover. Is that a compromise to you all, or was there a version that at one time was? I'd like to know what you think about the one that's coming over.
Yeah, I'm going to let Representative Mark Sharp take that.
Good afternoon, Representative Mark Sharp, Ranking Member on Public Safety. So the latest version to come out of the Senate Substitute Number 2 to Senate Committee Substitute to House Committee Substitute Number 2 for House Bill 495 is a long bill. It's 111 pages. So would I say there is a compromise? There's no compromise for what the state's trying to do and what Republicans are trying to do to St. Louis. There's just no compromise for that. Now, with that being said, there is some good stuff that was added in that Senate substitute. But again, there is just no way that you can compromise for that. And I want to thank Senator May and every other senator that tried their best to filibuster this bill. But it seems to me that the state doesn't do a very good job of running law enforcement agencies. And it's very interesting how they choose Kansas City and St. Louis City to pick on when they are mainly led by African-American local elected leaders. And we're seeing more and more of this this session. It usually wasn't this bad, but it's pretty bad this year. We're seeing a lot of bills that are attacking local municipalities, and this is just the latest iteration. So it's a shame that the city of St. Louis is looking to join, or not looking to join, but will be joining Kansas City as one of the only major cities in the state and across the country ran by the state.
I just spoke with the governor 45 minutes ago, and he said that rank and file members of the St. Louis Police Department support him. Would you agree with that statement, or have you talked to other officers that don't like this?
I wouldn't say that's across the board. I mean, officers in St. Louis City have already received multiple pay raises. 7% was the last one they received for officers that are under 20 years. So I wouldn't say that that's across the board. They've reduced homicides. And again, it's interesting that the state thinks that they can improve when the state's having a tough time managing their own Missouri Highway State Patrol. So it's interesting that they think that this is going to improve public safety when it really won't.
Representative Fogel, can we talk about the budget for a minute? Yeah, of course. The budget subcommittees did a couple of things this week. There was like $1 billion of what was called empty authority taken out. There's also like 60 earmarked items worth $183 million added in. What do you see as the big picture coming out of that actions as you head into markup next week or maybe the week after spring break?
Absolutely. It sounds like the plan is to mark up in big budget next week, and I'm looking forward to seeing the House Committee sub that the chairman will drop, I would imagine, early next week. In subcommittee, what you saw, and from my opinion, is good collaboration from the subcommittee chairs with the minority party. We were able to get a lot of our budget priorities in, and we're hoping that those maintain in the version of the budget that the chairman will drop next week. Big picture, I would anticipate that when we see the subcommittee, there are significant cuts to services and that we are going to reduce the amount that we're spending from the governor's budget to what the chairman will offer. That's pretty standard in the House. We tend to spend less and then we kick it over to the Senate and they, make more investments than we choose to do over in the House. And I would anticipate this year would be no different.
Are Democrats getting their opportunity for their earmarks that they want in the budget?
We are. We have a list of over 220 items that House Democrats are trying to get through the budget process right now. We've gotten about 30 in. If the chair chooses to take all of our subcommittee recommendations, that leaves a lot on the table. As we've discussed before, we're in a different financial situation this year than I've been in my first 4, and things are a little tighter, and subsequent years are going to be even more tight. So we're trying to find that balance of making sure we're funding the right projects, but not asking the chair for a list of 220 that we know is just not feasible this year.
And do you have any indication from the chair that he's going to fund the full state adequacy target amount?
The chair has given me no indication. The House chair has given me no indication. Yeah.
I'm hearing that both House and Senate are going to restore the $300 million to the foundation formula, because you all don't want to be tagged as, I guess, underfunding the education formula. Is there an effort for that?
Absolutely. I think that's something every time I've stood before you guys and on this microphone that I've talked about the importance of this caucus to restore that $300 million. I know Chairman Huff in the Senate has been pretty vocal about his intention of supporting all the components of Senate Bill 727 and restoring the $300 million. I myself have not heard the chair in the House publicly say that, but of course all House Democrats would stand beside him if he chooses to do so.
Are you happy the distraction of the whole David Spears things is over and now you guys can focus on their budget?
Yes.
Just to tag off of the education formula. So hypothetically, if the House and Senate does restore the $300 million, is there concern that the governor might go back to his original proposal and withhold?
Yeah, of course, it's the governor's right to line item veto anything that he seems appropriate. But I would imagine if both the House and the Senate are united, I think it's a really bad look if you then continue to choose to withhold from school districts across the state. So I would hope that pressure would be enough for the $300 million to remain.
Anything else?
Just real quickly, Rams, Chiefs, and
We missed it. We missed it.
still have nightmares about it. The Chiefs and the Royals, I also talked to the governor about that. He's optimistic that something can get happened. I know you're from the KC area. Any new updates in this last week?
I've had 0 new updates. I was not invited to the meeting last week, and no one's talked to me about updates this week, so I couldn't tell you.
But as a caucus, is that something you guys are trying to, prioritize because you want to keep those teams here?
I would say our caucus is probably mixed on that. We're not all Kansas City folks, and we've seen this happen in the state before, and there are of course taxpayer concerns at stake here. We need to make sure that whatever proposal comes to the forefront is something that is responsible with taxpayer dollars and also makes sense for local municipalities, Kansas City, Jackson County, and the state. And I'm not certain that our caucus will be united on that. What I can say personally is, of course, I hope we can keep the Chiefs and the Royals. I've been a big fan my whole life, and it's really prudent that we at least do what we can. That said, I couldn't tell you where we're at there.
Thank you.
Can I just ask Representative Sharp, you were talking about in the STLPD takeover bill, you had said there was some good stuff added. What kind of good stuff?
Okay, so there's really, I have to say this, the 2 bad portions, of course, are the St. Louis City takeover portion and the reporting of immigration status for any person who's arrested. That's a new piece that was added. But some of the good stuff, the Missing and Murdered African American Women and Girls Task Force, sponsored by Senator Mosley and Representative Mosley. So that's a fantastic piece and was a priority for the Missouri Legislative Black Caucus, so we're happy to see that in there. Civil actions for wrongful convictions. This is the restitution language that's been floating around for years. So this changes it from being exonerated on actual innocence from DNA only to any evidentiary method, and also allows restitution payments increase of up to $179 per day, no more than $65,000 for a year. training requirements for peace officers starting in 2027, training focused on racial profiling and de-escalation training for our law enforcement agencies across the state. Also, organized retail theft and stunt driving, which has been a huge part of the crime in Kansas City, particularly in my district. So I'm happy to see those two pieces in there. Welfare of a child in the first degree adds fentanyl and carfentanil to the list of drugs that will put a person or make them charged with first degree of child welfare endangerment. The Committee on School Safety, they'll be submitting reports annually to try to reduce gun violence in our school systems. And that is about it in that bill. So it's been reduced greatly, and most of the House amendments were stripped, most of them, including my House Bill 645. But again, I don't think these are all great provisions that have been had a lot of broad bipartisan support over the years, but it's still not enough to balance it out.
I know there's been arguments about overturning the will of the people. How is a bill able to overturn a public vote? I'm trying to understand that. Was it that was a statewide vote, I'm assuming? So how can we do this via a bill as opposed to a proposed constitutional amendment?
Well, the legislative process will allow for that, unfortunately. And again, the will of the people being overturned in 2012, it took a year or two just for the transition from state to local leaders to go into place. So we say 2012, but in reality, it was closer to 2014. So it really is a shame that Republicans are overturning the will of the people that was just done not so long ago.
Anything else? All right. Thanks so much. Have a great weekend.